Welcome to Feature Fridays. My name is Guy Bartram. I'm the Director of Product Marketing for our cloud providers at VMware. And today I'm joined by Gerrit. Welcome, Gerrit. Welcome back. And Peter, first time on. So let's start with you, Peter. Can you just introduce yourself, who you are, what you do at VMware?
Yeah, sure. And first of all, many thanks that I'm here together with you. And my name is Peter. I'm in VMware since roughly 5.5 years. And I run the cloud provider business here in Germany.
Cool. Thanks, Peter. And Gerrit.
Yeah, thanks, Guy and Peter. Gerrit Lehr, Principal Strategist in the worldwide multi-cloud architecture and strategy team. And I think I've been on the Feature Fridays, I don't know, 10 times now?
Yeah, quite a few times, yeah. Well, welcome back, and thanks for your contribution. Okay, so today we're discussing exploiting VCPP bundles to generate the the fullest amount of incremental revenue that is available via the bundles. And Peter, you kind of raised this topic with me, and it's a very interesting topic. Obviously, we want to make sure our cloud providers are getting the most value out of the core, the Flex core. Do you want to give some background around this? How did this one come up?
Yeah, sure. So during the VM Explorer, so in Barcelona, Gerrit and myself, we gave a session, exactly to this topic, and the feedback was pretty good from the audience, and we were requested several times to make this presentation again. And then, so the idea came up, okay, maybe we can transfer this idea, this presentations to an interactive session, and therefore we prepared 3 or 4 slides, but we tried to keep it interactual as possible.
Yeah, no worries. So let's talk about the kind of type of challenges and responses you've seen from cloud providers. Then, what's been the feedback for the Flex core? Because it's come a long way. I mean, we started all these bundles. 5 years ago we had all of the bundles, and now we've gone to this single Flex core. We've built in things like migration for free. TKG is now included. So what is the feedback from cloud providers today?
Yeah. So the majority of our service provider ecosystem is pretty happy about it, because it gives them the freedom, and the flexibility to choose the right products for their services, And if I compare it with our structure, so in the past, it was from time to time not easy to choose one dedicated, one explicit product, because you have to use the whole bundle, And so it's pretty good, as said, because the service provider have the chance together with us to build up own services, so for security or all the other things. And this gives them the great opportunity to enlarge their IT portfolio.
Yeah, and you're talking about that. So, from the Flex core, there's obviously a lot of capability there. You've got Cloud Director, vCenter, NSX, Tanzu, Cloud Director availability. I think Log Insight is still included as well.
Yeah.
So what type of solutions are cloud providers kind of delivering today? And specifically, what are we, when we're talking about incremental revenue, what are the type of incremental revenues they should be looking at?
Yeah. So in the last couple of months and years, we see more and more, especially in the security area. There's a great opportunity. There's a great opportunity. And so I'm pretty sure you know it. So we're seeing ransomware attacks skyrocketing worldwide. So and impacting organizations of all size and across the world. And therefore, there is a great opportunity for our service providers and their end customers to address exactly this topic. So because as also in other industry sectors, to get the right staffing, to have the right resources in place, and to have the right solutions, to protect the company. It's not so easy to handle all the things at the same time. And therefore, it's a great opportunity together. So it's a joint approach between the service providers and us as VMware to deliver services to the market to help the end customers in terms of security issues. Yeah, this is more or less a really quite interesting topic. And so the idea basically is, so the question, or to analyze together with the service providers, how to add additional revenue streams from the add-ons. Yeah, so if you're talking about security, and for sure to get more revenue streams based on the flexible model. So security is really one of the biggest areas, I would say.
Yeah, I think sorry, Garrett, go on.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think it's really that combination that Peter just mentioned, right? So a lot of providers approach us asking, how can we, build value-added services, create more revenue streams? But in every conversation, security is one of the main topics, right? Whether it's infrastructure security, network security, modern application security, it's always there, and it's one of the biggest concerns, right? For the core business as well as for value-added services. And that's pretty much how we structured this session as well.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of security, there's a lot of capability in the Flex core, right? So you've got your NSX edge firewalls, you've got your log management solutions for syslogging, you've got VCD, so you can do your kind of layer 4 firewalling, and then you move into the really interesting space, which is the microsegmentation space, and that is obviously an add-on. I think it's 1 point per gigabyte RAM. But I see this as kind of table stakes. I don't think any enterprise cloud should be going out there without microsegmentation turned on. And now that Cloud Director is supporting things like dynamic firewall rules, using vSphere tagging, you can then dictate firewall rules in an ever-changing environment to meet the VMs wherever they move to, whichever hosts they're on, and ensure they've got that east-west protection as well as the kind of north-south. And it's amazing how many service providers are not using microsegmentation today, and are still using hardware-based firewalling. Garrett, what are some of the reasons behind that, do you think?
I think one of the reasons is, exactly what you just mentioned. We have, haven't had that feature exposed in VCD for a long time, right? So if partners wanted to monetize that, it would have been through a managed service, right? Whereas now we are increasingly seeing more and more features, being exposed through VCD, which effectively makes it self-service capable and more scalable for the provider, right? So that was the trade-off that we had in the past, and where we're really seeing a lot of advancements in our product development through, the exposure of advanced product features in VCD.
Yeah. So, Peter, what sort of revenue models are we kind of considering then? And, you're in EMEA in Germany. What does the market look like for you guys over there?
Yeah, so especially if you mean with part of services, yeah. So you can say, I would say let's say the pure infrastructure as a service market, yeah. So this is more or less commodity, yeah. So pretty sure, and for sure, yes, we have service providers who address exactly this market. But in this market, we're talking also about a niche market, and it's fine. But I guess we have they have two challenges at the moment, yeah. So they need to find a way for differentiation. Yeah, and thanks to the services, they have a great chance. Yeah, because of this IT portfolio and the service portfolio, they can differentiate from other service providers, and that generates a big opportunity for them. And then also and this is not a secret or not a special things in VMware. So this is an overall topic in service provider business. With services, you have the chance to earn money, and the margin is pretty interesting. Yeah, so the service is really it's a key point. It's a key point, and also it's a combination. Yeah, so a service needs also a pretty good support, first, second level support. Yeah, a service need to have a really good skill set. Yeah, and I guess this combination of parameters is quite important for the service provider market. That means, so in my point of view, services and as Garrett mentioned, also service in terms of container technologies, so software applications and security. So it's a combination is the key. And from a commercial point of view, as said, it's the machine for to generate revenue streams based on services.
Yeah, I think there's an interesting point you raise. It's kind of the commodity market, the IaaS market today, and secondary. You raise another really interesting point: support. Most customers are who have internal IT departments are used to picking up the phone or logging a ticket with their IT department when there's a challenge, when there's a problem. And if you look at the hyperscale clouds that are out there today, support is pretty limited. So running your kind of enterprise applications on there can be problematic. Whereas with a cloud provider and the VMware cloud providers we have, they all have really good SLAs and really good support, skilled staff, as you mentioned. And often IT departments today are struggling to get the skills to manage even their heritage estates. They're plain old VMs. As everyone is skilling up on next generation infrastructures like Kubernetes. So giving the cloud provider the ability to kind of migrate those VMs from the customer into their cloud in a very easy way that's not going to impact the business, and then wrapping that around with the enterprise grade security and the additional services that they can derive from the add-ons, but also being able to provide that innovation going forward, starting to look at that next generation infrastructure. And FlexCore delivers, Tanzu Kubernetes Grid, CSE, Cloud Container Service Extension 4.0. I'm hearing feedback from customers that it's mind-blowing. It's completely a game changer compared to the last versions of Container Service Extension. And really now getting into the competitive zones with what you can get out of the box with hyperscale environments. Having all of that in Cloud Director, having the flexibility to upscale your offering to be enterprise grade with micro-segmentation, but then build in back firewalls, build in container services, and having those environments side by side is a real differentiator for our cloud providers.
Right. And let me raise, Guy, one additional point. And this is also it's quite close to your topic here. So this is a service provider, have always the challenge between to have the right SLAs in place and to make sure that they deliver the right KPIs, and all those SLAs are working quite well. And at the same time, they have also the challenge to be innovative, and to be innovative, and this two processes, at the same time, it's not easy to catch all the points exactly and to give and to provide all the right services at the market is needed. And therefore, I guess it's quite important to have software solutions to help them, in also in time to market, it's a quite important point, that you really that you have the chance to have a fast start with your services, and at the same time that you're acting on a compliant way, that you have, as you said, the right SLAs, that you have the first and second level support on the right level, for the service provider, for the service which you provided to the market. And I guess this combination is the key to success.
Yeah, I think you raise a good point. I mean, service providers. So when you look at Cloud Director and you look at the self-service capability that Cloud Director brings, Cloud Director, you still need to know your stuff, right? I mean, it's not for everyone. It's for kind of operational admins who understand VMware. And it does present some awesome self-service capabilities if you understand how to use it and the concepts of VApps, networking, firewalls, etc. But we also allow for the guys who don't understand how VMware works. So, I think what we've done is really nice. Two things that jump out: time to market. You got Cloud Director, you got multiple sites, which most cloud providers do. just deploy cloud direct availability, start replicating between sites and provide DR as a service. Then you can complement that and build up that portfolio with various add-on services, testing perhaps, that type of thing. And then you can also account for the people in your customer organization who don't know infrastructure. And you can account for that with the App Launchpad, which again is another plugin to VCD. It's free. It syncs to the VMware Cloud Marketplace. You can pull down what you want, curate it, and deliver it to the customer. So in that respect, we're addressing the IT admins and operators, but also the users who just want to access a catalog, point and click. I want one of these, just like that hyperscale experience.
Yeah, it's true. Exactly. And that's the point. And Guy, if you like, so Garrett and myself, we developed, let's say, an easy to adopt logic. Yeah. So based on, I guess, 3 or 4 interesting use cases. Yeah. And we presented this also during our VM Explore in Barcelona. And I think this could help, that the service providers can see how you can include these best practices in your portfolio and your business on an easy way. So if you like.
Let's dive into it.
So here's the logic that we built this on, which is quite important. So we start for each use case, we started looking at the services that a customer may want to consume, right? And then we'll have a quick look on what does that look like in the Amazon Web Services world, right? We could have chosen any other hyperscaler, Azure, GCP, it's basically all the same. We're just, appreciating that, AWS is pretty much the market leader in the hyperscale world, and they have really mastered this art of creating incremental revenue streams from each and every feature, right? So I'm a big fan of learning from someone that's very well established in the market, and that's what we want to do here, right? But there's also a downside to that, what AWS and other hyperscalers have been doing there, to the point that, I think some 59% of customers are overspending their cloud budget, according to a recent study. So what we also want to do is learn how VMware cloud providers can make this even better and more compelling for their customer, right? Let's start with an easy use case, infrastructure as a service. So we obviously need a cloud management portal, and we have that for free in AWS and any other hyperscaler. And we basically have that for free in the Flex Core bundle through Cloud Director, right? So this is as easy as it gets. And from there, customers will typically, want virtual machines, basic infrastructure as a service. Now, when we look at the hyperscale market, this is charged per virtual machine. But when you look at the details, it's way more complex than that. There are more cost metrics attached to that, like egress traffic, IP addresses, CPU credits. So this can get quite complex, right? And in the VMware ecosystem for VCP partners, we basically use vSphere, which is part of the Flex Core bundle as well. So still pretty easy. But then looking one level deeper, and especially to the point of security, we'll need more to give actual value to the customer in terms of, networking, load balancing, VPN connectivity, right? So everything to connect and secure that virtual machine. And when we look at that, which is all needed to extract any value from a VM, it can get quite complex out there in the hyperscale market, right? So we have quite a lot of metrics to understand and to predict. We have fairly complex charging units like this per LCU hour for load balancers, which is an artificial metrics, very hard to predict. So this is not easy for customers. And it's one of the reasons why a lot of customers overspend their cloud budget, right? Now, in VCPP, all of that is, again, part of the Flex Core bundle as part of the NSX Base Edition, right? So really the suggestion here for partners, and I think this is pretty straightforward for this first use case, is bundle everything that's needed to run a virtual machine and do something meaningful with it into one single per VM price, including those basic networking capabilities. Because we include all of that in the VCP Flex Core bundle for you. It's better customer focus, it's predictable pricing, and you have better capabilities and qualities compared to those native services, which allows you to charge a little bit of a premium for virtual machines with those capabilities.
Garrett, when you're looking at this, so a couple of things. When you're looking at a hyperscaler and you're looking at the VM cost, obviously there's on-demand rates. There's 1, 2, 3 year terms and commits. But typically customers will try and do a commit. But the key thing there is when you do a term engagement and then you don't need the VM anymore, you are responsible, you own that VM, you've got to then sell that back somehow through the marketplace. So there's a whole load of kind of cost management and really operational overhead with managing that optimization, which all goes away when you look at a cloud provider. And the second thing I just wanted to think about is per VM pricing is fine, and a cloud provider could do small, medium, large, SAP VMs, whatever they wanted. But also they could do resource pools if they're using Cloud Director and make them based on the granularity of VRAM and CPU and storage that is provided to that resource pool. And then they can do even better things like oversubscription, flexible resource pools, or flex VMs. So really, I think the opportunity for margin in the cloud provider world with Cloud Director, with resource pooling and oversubscription, and flexible allocation models, really extends that margin opportunity significantly for our cloud providers.
Yeah, exactly. I think like this works in both rates, right? You as a provider have the opportunity to optimize your margins there, by oversubscribing or designing different tiers of resource pools. But you can also allow customers to decide how strongly they want to over provision their environment, right? Which is fairly complex to decide on in the hyperscale world. But as a VCPP cloud provider, you can make this easier for your customers and give them more choice, right? So that's
but I mean, critically, you can't do that in the hyperscale world. You have to buy a VM with a certain amount of resources.
Exactly, and you would need to ship to a different one, right?
yeah, whether you use it or not. So these are some of the key kind of selling principles I think our cloud providers need to understand when talking to customers whose pretty much view on public cloud is hyperscaler.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I mean, you could break out these networking and additional services, right, like any hyperscaler does. But really for those basic services, you shouldn't really do that because it's just too complex for your customers, and they need this anyways, right? So why not make it easy for this basic use case?
Yeah, I agree.
So when we expand on that IaaS use case a little bit, we quickly need to look at VCPP add-ons, right? Because a lot of customers will probably want, logging and monitoring for their environment, right? And again, in the hyperscale world, there are a lot of different metrics. Logging is easy, but monitoring can be on a per event, per alarm, per metric, per dashboard, per whatever basis, right? So fairly complex, fairly hard to predict. And in VCPP, as you mentioned before, Guy, we include vRealize Log Insight in the Flex Core bundle, right? So this is something you can use without additional license fees to offer a logging service. And then the first chargeable add-on in the monitoring space would be vRealize Operations, right? Most likely in the advanced bundle, at least that's what we see as the most compelling bundle for customers. And this is the first additional revenue stream based on an add-on service, right? But as you can see on the left, it's fairly complex to price and predict that in the hyperscale world. And we want to show you how to make this easier in the VCPP world.
To be clear here, if you're using Cloud Director, right, and you're delivering virtual data center services, that infrastructure baseline to your customers, you can use vRealize Operations with the tenant app plugin in Cloud Director for free. That's something that's included, and that will give your customers that it's basic monitoring of the resources and the performance within your virtual data centers. When we start looking at, I want to see, application alarms, etc., or more detail around the VMs, that's when you then move into the kind of, I need an add-on here. Yeah,
and that's an add-on that customers are willing to pay for, right? As we can see on the left with the hyperscale world. Yeah, similar approach when it comes to automation, right? So in the hyperscale world, there are different ways of doing that. For example, CloudFormation, which is infrastructure as code and free, or OpsWorks, which is more sophisticated, based on Puppet and Chef, which is chargeable. And providers can actually, through the VCPP program, follow the same model, right? So they could use the VCD Terraform plugin, which is free, to offer that to customers, or if they want something more advanced, they can charge their customers for vRealize automation. Again, very likely in the advanced edition, but there are several editions to choose from, right?
Yeah.
So giving customers choice and a similar set of services that they would find out in the rest of the market.
Yeah, and as said, thanks to the automation, so our service providers have the freedom, the bandwidth, to invest time in architectures and in products, to be innovative, So and especially the Terraform is really popular, and a lot of our service provider use it,
Yeah, and I think it's the Terraform VCD provider is pretty easy to use, and it's typically when we bring new features into Cloud Director, you can pretty much guarantee within the next 3 to 6 months the Terraform provider will be updated to capture some if not all of those new capabilities and provide them as infrastructure as code. So it's a great capability today. It covers all of the VCD components, but also is now starting to cover the NSX components. It covers all of the NSXT, and things like advanced load balancer. All of that stuff is in Terraform provider, which is fantastic.
Yeah, and it's a standard, right? I mean, it's pretty much what most people out there use. So you'll probably find it easier to hire someone that understands Terraform versus hiring someone that understands CloudFormation, which is AWS specific, right? And you have a different IAC tool for Azure and another different one for GCP. Terraform is more or less a standard, right?
Yeah.
So let's conclude this use case with again the security discussion, which is really important for everything that we're doing, right? So looking at advanced firewalling capabilities, intrusion detection, where interestingly enough, there is not a one-to-one equivalent service in AWS, right? So the closest to an intrusion detection is probably guard duty. And of course, there are various networking capabilities and firewalling capabilities. But as you can see, again, quite complex charging matrices on a per firewall endpoint, per gigabyte traffic, per million events kind of basis, right? Now, in the VCPP world, we would very likely offer those services through the NSX Advanced add-on. Right, so this gives partners and customers a lot of capabilities from the formerly mentioned east-west firewalling, application-aware firewalling, and so on. So
just to be clear on that, though, Garrett, you can't do east-west firewalling easily, or I don't think I might be wrong, but I don't think you can do it at all when you're looking at ingress-egress firewalling, which is what the hyperscalers provide.
Yeah, there are network rules that you can apply on that VPC level, but it's complex. Like, in my opinion, not as sophisticated as the NSX firewall, right?
Yeah, exactly. And cloud providers, just incidentally, when you're looking at a customer environment, if you're trying to upsell NSX advanced functionality, you can use the vRealize Network Insight Cloud in an assessment mode and deploy a collector into the customer environment, and then instantly get a view of all of their traffic, all of their exposure, which is a significant differentiator when you looking at hyperscalers, kind of looking at the old way of doing things, where you don't have that visible map. It takes me back 15 years when we were configuring checkpoint firewalls and you had to reload rules and all that sort of stuff. You're pretty much blind, apart from the simple in-out logging about what's going on. Whereas vRealize Network Insight will give you that visibility, and you can use that as a great sales tool to say, hey, look, here's your environment. Did you know this was talking to this? And all of this is open, and we can get the recommended micro-segmentation rules out of the box very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So how do we recommend to charge for those services, right? Logging, you can basically align with what the market out there does as well. Since the Log Insight bundle is not an additional license, you can simply charge for the gigabytes of storage that's consumed by that logging mechanism, right? So that's pretty straightforward. Monitoring, that's easily done on a per VM basis, so easy to predict for customers. And yeah, you can just create as many events or alarms or dashboards as you want as a customer, right? Which is way easier and more customer focused than, charging for every event, every metric, super hard to predict. So really easier in the VCPP model, right? Same for automation, right? So we do this on a per VM basis. And yeah, the reasoning is very likely you may not need VRA, for example, for every VM, and you just want to be charged for the ones that you're actually automating away, right?
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
Gary, sorry for interrupting. So if I remember correctly, in Barcelona, we received several times the questions in terms of the billing process when we're talking about VRAM and NSX.
Yeah.
Do you have a best practice, or could you explain?
Yeah, absolutely.
How it works? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's something that comes up quite a lot, right? So for monitoring and automation, the VCPP metric is either VRAM or per VM or per operating system instance. For networking, right, it's most likely only based on VRAM. So the question that comes up a lot is, hey, I can't really charge a different firewall price for a larger VM versus a smaller VM, right? So the per VRAM metric is not nice to sell to the end customer. You very likely want to sell, especially those networking features, on a per virtual machine basis. So you have a bit of a disconnect between what the VCPP program charges the provider and what the provider wants to charge the customer. So a question that comes up quite frequently, that came up in Barcelona as well. So the idea there is, and I've just recently published a blog post on that we can probably share in the show notes, is you want to figure out what an average VM in your organization looks like, right? And then you want to look a little bit at the distribution. Do you have a lot of small VMs, a lot of large VMs? But most importantly, calculate a price point that may have very low or even zero margin for the largest VMs that have a lot of VRAM, but then you recover that low margin with a higher margin for smaller VMs, right? And through the calculation and the analysis that I'm explaining in that blog post, you can ensure that you'll always have a positive margin, or even the margin that you want for your services, right? So that allows you to convert from VRAM to per VM charge and have a more compelling price metric to your end customers, even though we charge based on VRAM.
And you can configure your pricing policies in the chargeback function that we provide as well, right? I mean, that's now taken a lot of feedback over the years from cloud providers. I remember a few years ago it wasn't particularly great. It had some limitations on it. We've significantly improved that now, and again, it's like the Terraform provider. It's covering products and solutions as they come out, but it allows you to do your calculations on top and various ways of kind of doing things. We've taken a lot of that feedback into chargeback, so that is available either a service provider, and this is often an interesting discussion about charging. It's like, how do I charge when I've got my CRM, my OSS systems, which run the billing cycle, and typically most providers have configured their their billing in those systems, but we've got chargeback, which will do all of that for you. We'll do the metering and calculate the amount, and you can even show the tenant their cost. Today, I think now chargeback is in a place where it covers enough for you to be able to say, right, I can take that information, pull it into my billing system and present a bill, or I can take that information and present that directly to the tenant if infrastructure is the only service they have.
Yeah, exactly, right. And with the VRAM to VM conversion, it's really about doing the math once and figuring out kind of margin need, and then let VROPS do the implementation for you. So yeah, that's exactly right. All right. So this is the recommended approach that I would propose. You could, of course, alternatively just create a pretty worry-free one-price bundle that may, for example, include advanced realize operation, automation, and NSX, and then just increase the base VM price based on that, right? Just add 20%, 30%, whatever you need for those services, and make it as easy as possible for your customers, right? Simply build an IaaS offering that includes all that as part of the basic price.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's another good point, right? Enterprises want predictability in cost. Having all of these components individually chargeable, it's great. I mean, it's how they're kind of doing hyperscale today, but is that the right thing for your customers? And I think that would depend on what your customer profiles are. If you've got a large enterprise base of medium enterprises, then cost prediction is probably more important to them. Whereas if you're looking at SMB, they might be more happy with the components and only kind of getting charged for what they use.
Yeah, I think it depends on what your budgeting process looks like as a customer and what your workloads look like, right? Do you really need this flexibility of scaling things up and down and being super granular? Probably not all enterprises do, right? But what a lot of enterprises need is cost predictability and ensuring that they don't massively overspend their budgets, which is what currently happens in the cloud market, right?
Definitely.
Cool. Yeah. So let's move on to a more sophisticated workload, and we're going to start with the free options in VCPP again when it comes to modern apps and containers in this second use case. So Kubernetes is pretty much on top of mind for everyone, right? So offering Kubernetes by itself or consuming that from AWS is pretty straightforward. It's called EKS, and we have similar services in other providers. And that's on a per cluster fee and a per worker node, so kind of virtual machine basis, right? Providers can build exactly the same thing on VCPP using, as you mentioned before, the Tanzu Kubernetes grid, which is now an included part of the FlexCore bundle, and the container service extension for VCT, right? So this is pretty easy and straightforward. However, just like with virtual machines, customers will need a lot of additional services to do anything meaningful with Kubernetes, right? So they'll need ingress capabilities, Kubernetes backup, a container registry, monitoring, probably even an application marketplace to make workloads easily consumable, right? And when we unpack that set of services that's really required for customers in the hyperscale world, you can see that there is a lot of complexity involved here again, right? You have, again, load balancers with, interesting metrics that they are charged on. We have storage, we have the registry based on storage and traffic, and additional alarms and events that we need to consider when predicting that price. Now, in the VCPP world, everything you need to build a similar stack is pretty much included in the FlexCore bundle or in the products that are part of the FlexCore bundle, right? So we have NSX based, which includes the advanced load balancer in the basic edition, which allows you to do container ingress, up to layer 4, right? And we also have various VCPP and Cloud Director extensions and add-on, which come free of charge and which allow you to build those additional services like object storage for backup, app launchpad as a marketplace in combination with Bitnami. And especially through the replacement of Tanzu Basic with Tanzu Kubernetes Grid 2.0 in FlexCore, we now also ship open source products like Prometheus, Harbor, Grafana, Fluentbit, and support them as part of Tanzu Kubernetes Grid. So very little known today, but very important when it comes to building the Kubernetes offering with what's already on the truck as part of your FlexCore bundle.
I think that's critical, Garrett. We support them, which you wouldn't get that from any hyperscaler. Those open source packages now packaged in TKG are supported. So when you're looking at developing enterprise grade products, you must be using a platform that is supported in all aspects.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, we need to get that information out there a lot more, because I think it's a very, very important point. So how do we recommend that you offer Kubernetes as a service to begin with? It's again down to charging what you can charge for, but making it easy for your customers, which would be building a pretty compelling and predictable Kubernetes bundle, which does not just include the Kubernetes service itself, but backup capabilities, container registry capabilities, just making it easy to use and consume everything that the customer needs anyway, right? No one's going to run a Kubernetes cluster without a registry or without container networking. So why not make this easy, chart on a familiar per VM and per gigabyte of storage basis, and make it predictable for your customers? Because all of these things that you need to build that as a provider is part of the FlexCore bundle anyways. And it allows you as a provider to drive, incremental revenue through more IaaS workloads or through third-party or open source applications that customers consume through the application marketplace. So basically increasing the workload on your platform through that approach. And of course, alternatively, you could turn many of those add-on services into managed services, maybe offer them via a shared services cluster, which would usually be the next iteration on top of offering them as a self-service.
Yep.
Yeah. And Guy, maybe just also perspective from a market point of view. Yeah. So within all of our customers, the application is the lifeblood of the modern organization. Yeah. And it's how a business competes in the market and delivers to its end users. Yeah. So today we know that the customer's main concern are the business applications. Yeah. So cloud has created both an opportunity and a dilemma for many customers, in my point of view. Yeah. So the desire to outsource for cloud benefits, such as faster time to productivity and lower cost, but also versus the need for agile business application management. Yeah. And this exactly is addressed based on our technology. Yeah.
And I think the great thing here is, which again is different from the hyperscalers, is when we're talking about Kubernetes, we're talking about, potentially, if you wish, running heritage applications in VMs side by side with Kubernetes, and able to cross communicate. So it really enables a smoother transition to a Kubernetes environment, which, when you're looking at application digitalization and innovation, and that transformation process, the smoother you can make it, the better.
Yeah, that's a good transition to really the slide that concludes this session, which is about delivering developer platforms and developer productivity, right? Which is what a lot of times requires some additional add-ons in the VCPP program. So the kind of services that customers may want to consume, there is source code repositories for developers to store their code, CI pipelines to bring new applications to production quickly, right? We might need a GitOps tool set to automate the underlying infrastructure as part of the application pipeline, messaging queues for application communication, databases to store data, right? So these are all services, amongst others, that are pretty high in demand from an application and developer perspective. So in the Amazon world, especially for the development side, again, we have a whole set of services, which is also true for GCP and Azure, and a lot of different metrics that those services are charged for, right? In the database space, it's a bit easier. It's usually charged on a per instance and per gigabyte and traffic basis, but still not super straightforward, right? Now, what's the approach that we recommend for partners in the VCPP space here? It's, first of all, starting with free packages from VMware Marketplace and Bitnami through a Launchpad, for example, right? So we could use GitLab as a source code repository or as a CI/CD kind of platform, and we could use all kinds of developer tools, open source databases from Bitnami to start offering those data services. Now, you mentioned that enterprise support and everything is super important. So why do we recommend starting with those open source versions? Well, the reason is that a lot of partners tell us, we do not know exactly where this market is moving and what the customer demand is for those applications and packages going forward. So the idea is have an entry offering that, again, allows you to drive incremental IaaS revenue on those open source packages, right? Make it easy to consume. And from there, gain an understanding about what your customers need and where your market is moving, right? And once you have that, you can, based on the cloud provider program add-ons, build a very compelling upselling path for your customers. So if your customers feel that they need a more enterprise-ready development and DevOps platform that integrates with those popular open source tools, they can leverage Tanzu Application Platform as an add-on in the cloud provider program, right? So you would simply charge that as a higher price point for your Kubernetes cluster, and it can nicely integrate into open source tools that your customers may already be using, but is an enterprise-grade, really high-end solution that's fully supported and developed by VMware. And the same logic applies to the data services, data solution part, right? So you have things like SQL, Postgres, and so on, which are all based on those open source components that customers can use for free, but we ship them as enterprise products, consumable through BCD, so that you give customers a nice upselling path once you understood where they are going, and then again charge them on an easy per VM or per gigabyte basis.
Yeah, I think so. There's a couple of things here. VMware has significantly established and expanded now the capabilities of what we've just discussed. The Tanzu application platform, and your point about the Bitnami going from open source code to something that is supported is critical. With this flexibility, we're enabling customers, our partners, to almost try before you buy, right? Start using these solutions, develop their applications upon these solutions. But when you deploy them into a production environment, do you really want to be doing that on open source platforms is the question to ask. And the Tanzu application platform, a SaaS service, but will then allow you to curate which applications you wish to publish down and sync those to a repo in your customer's environment. Those are the Tanzu application platform actually evolved from what VMware does internally in any case. It was our way of ensuring that the open source that we use in our environments are all secure, tested, kept up to date. And you can't do that yourself. That is too much of an overhead for 99.99% of customers.
Yeah,
so
I think, Guy, this is the important point from a service provider perspective and also from a support point of view. Thanks to VMware and using this technology, you have the support for this kind of technologies, and this is really the value. Yeah, if I compare it, let's say with a pure open source technology. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also like one of the, I think, the critical or complicated parts for customers is stitching together a secure software supply chain with open source components, let alone the support, right? But just making that all work and integrate is quite hard and breaks at scale. Whereas Tanzu application platform is really that all-in-one platform that allows you to bring secure software to production easily, right? That's an important differentiator as well.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if you're going to cover it, Garrett, but there's even more additional things to this use case. There's things like high performance compute, GPU, AI, ML, object storage, potentially other things that developers will want for your applications to use, which are all available today, again, which you can run side by side and are fully supported in these environments. So we work with NVIDIA GPU. If you deploy NVIDIA GPUs on a dedicated cluster, sign up to the NVIDIA partner program. I can't remember the exact name about it, but it's the NVIDIA Global Catalog you'll get access to. And those are all enterprise supported AI ML applications that have been tuned and optimized to run on NVIDIA GPUs. So again, you're getting that expansion capability to add on all of these various components to make your solution as competitive, and I would argue more competitive in many cases than hyperscalers for some of the reasons we've talked about. Yeah,
that's exactly right. So we don't cover those in detail on those slides, but like the logic is exactly the same as we presented it today, just for those additional services that you just mentioned. All right, that's all I have.
Excellent. So the summary then of today's session is that, with the Flex Core, you have a considerable starting position to deliver IaaS and to start establishing more revenue streams, either going for individual component monetization or monetizing it as a bundle. Then differentiating your offering and innovating on the new next generation infrastructure, which is Kubernetes. to be able to satisfy the developers as a buying persona, but also to constrain them to what is operationally valid and secure and vetted by your enterprise organization. So we're not letting the developers ride off into the sunset in the wild west. We're saying this is the highway you're on. Sure, if you want other components, we can plug those in alongside, but you're on this highway, you're not deviating from this highway. And in that way, we can keep the customer secure, we can keep the customer supported, and we can ensure that these applications that get delivered are enterprise grade.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. All right. Well, guys, thank you very much for today. It's been really interesting to talk about this, and hopefully our cloud providers have seen now that they can extend and gain more revenue by using what's on the truck today, and then using the add-ons that the Flex Flex Core enables you to use to further develop that offering and really meet your customer requirements to. I'm not going to say stop them going to hyperscale, because hyperscale still has very relevant services, but utilizing what you can utilize and establishing yourself as the virtual IT department and virtual operator for that company, getting closer to them, understanding more about their development, more about their strategy, more about their applications, and helping them on their way to cloud transformation.
Exactly. And Guy, our service providers becomes more and more to a trusted advisor, yeah. So for their end customers, and please let me establish an action point, yeah. So therefore, our goal, yeah, is to help the service providers during this journey, yeah. And please reach out to the cloud provider manager, to the whole ecosystem, and we are more than happy to help you through this journey.
Yeah, and in fact, Gerrit, I mean, your team provides a lot of help to service providers. Do you want to just briefly explain what that covers?
Yeah, the idea is basically that we support first with the business aspect of understanding the market opportunity, like we did today, what packaging pricing looks like and how you can do that for yourselves and how to differentiate those services. And then we can also have architectural guidance and support on how to actually build the underlying platform, as well as go-to-market support, sales enablement, really everything you need to get the service off the ground and sold. Yeah,
I mean, it's a great relationship, right? We work with providers. We're only successful if they're successful. So your team is supporting that. Peter, you're supporting that from account perspective. So if providers want to engage with these acceleration workshops with you, what's the best way of reaching out?
Yeah, just reach out to your account teams, like Peter and his peers across the globe, and they'll discuss the scope and come back to us, and then we'll schedule something.
Yeah, it's a quite easy process, Guy, and so it's quite important that we have a first idea, yeah. So that is not need to have a blueprint or anything else, yeah. To have an idea, and through the workshop steps, yeah, we will work together step by step to establish an offering. And as Gerrit has mentioned, also in price point of view, but also, and this is absolutely quite important point, in the whole go-to-market process. Yeah. So what marketing activities could help to support the new offering? Yeah. And what can we do in terms of joint approach and joint marketing activities? And this is included in the whole process.
And I think that's the real difference about being a kind of VMware cloud provider, is that VMware really goes above and beyond to try and help cloud providers monetize their solutions, to bring them to market, because it's of mutual interest to everyone. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time today. Really appreciate it.